Tonight, gunfire erupts inside a crowded Toronto mall.
I heard this pop. I thought it was like maybe a glass broke or firecrackers or something, and it kept on going.
Shoppers described frightening scenes as they scrambled to get out during the chaos. Plus,
we were told to evacuate, grab as many belongings as we could.
More than 100 people in Mississauga have been forced from their homes because of severe flooding after yesterday's powerful storm. And
I decided to do my part and get vaccinated for me and for my family.
Just days before an expected announcement about vaccine passports, Torontonians roll up their sleeves to get vaccinated.
This is CBC Late Night News.
Good evening, I'm Farah Morali. We start at Yorkdale Mall, where a daylight shooting rattled shoppers today. Police say they have one man in custody and are searching for a second suspect. We go live now to Greg Ross, who has been speaking to people who were inside as it all unfolded. Greg, they're describing some scary scenes.
Certainly, Farah, a very scary moment for the shoppers here at Yorkdale Mall today. Many people were here with their kids doing some back-to-school shopping. This shooting happened in the mid-afternoon when the mall was very, very busy. And as you can imagine, when people heard those shots, they scattered in all different directions, ducking for cover.
I heard this pop. I thought it was like maybe a glass broke or firecrackers or something, and it kept on going.
This woman was in the Hudson's Bay store just after 3:30 this afternoon when shots rang out nearby.
I'm still shaking right now because it's like, it was so scary. It was so scary.
When people realized there was an active shooting, witnesses tell us the scene quickly turned chaotic.
It was a horrible scene, people running out, screaming.
I think it was just pure panic. We saw kids tripping, we saw parents just grabbing their kids and pulling them.
The mall was locked down immediately, with staff and customers taking cover inside stores.
We were all crowded behind the cashier until people realized, oh, it's a genuine emergency, it's a lockdown, and only then did they let us back in the storage. And then it was a waiting game.
Minutes later, when police arrived, a suspect had already been identified.
There was a male who was identified fairly quickly by mall security. This male was chased on foot. He was arrested a short distance away from here on the 401 ramp. He did have a loaded firearm on him.
Police are still searching for a second suspect. At this point, they can't say how the two are connected.
There was two people that had firearms on them. We are still reviewing video to see if, in fact, it was two people shooting at each other or if it was perhaps only one person.
The mall remained locked down for several hours after the shooting, with customers and staff still hunkered down inside as police cleared the scene.
I have family inside right now in the Bay, my sister and my little nephews.
This happened almost 3 years to the day of another shooting inside Yorkdale Mall. The mall had to be locked down then as well.
And this is Toronto, right? So it's sad because we think of our city as being very safe.
Police say there's no indication that anybody was actually injured in the gunfire. They don't believe that anybody was actually shot, but we're told there were some people who did suffer some minor injuries in all of the chaos afterwards. Some witnesses tell us they saw people who fell down as they tried to flee, and then they were trampled by the crowd coming behind them. Now, police say they're reviewing security footage from inside the mall at the time of the shooting. They're also looking for anybody who may have witnessed the shooting to come forward and talk to police. Farah?
All right, thanks, Greg. Our Greg Ross reporting live tonight from Yorkdale Mall. Well, from scary scenes inside to scary scenes outside, for many people in southern Ontario, today was spent picking up the pieces from Saturday's powerful rain and thunderstorm. As the CBC's Paula Duhashik tells us, flooding forced some people living in a Mississauga building out of their homes.
The sudden storm made for quite a show on Saturday night and plenty of work on Sunday morning. Hydro crews spent the day dealing with scattered outages. At the peak of the storm, they say 20,000 people were left without power. The storm wasn't just inconvenient, it was deadly. In Erin, Ontario, about an hour west of Toronto, a man was killed. Police say a downed power line caused his truck to catch fire. The man collapsed suddenly while trying to put it out.
Some of the residents had described it to us as Niagara Falls within the building, so it was very intense. On the upper floor, there was actually ankle-high water.
Meanwhile, in Mississauga, more than 100 people were left without a home. They were evacuated after the storm led to heavy flooding inside their apartment building.
Because of the intense water, it got into the walls, it can wreak havoc within the electrical system, which can cause safety concerns for the residents here.
Many of the tenants affected by the flood are staying at a nearby community center. They're waiting for news on what comes next.
I was kind of like stressful to kind of hear you're not going to be going home today.
We were told to evacuate, grab as many belongings as we could, and we came here to Clarkson. All my work clothes and stuff is still there. I don't know if they're wet or whatnot. We'll have to figure it out later on tonight.
Environment Canada says the storm was caused by a recent stretch of hot, humid weather across southern Ontario.
And a lot of moisture in the air, and unfortunately, that's just ripe for these thunderstorm development.
Chang says luckily, these conditions won't last forever.
And I think everybody can breathe a sigh of relief because there will be relief coming. Starting on Tuesday, temperatures are going back to normal. So that's around 24 degrees, 25 degrees for a daytime high.
As for Anderson and his fellow tenants, they're trying to figure out what comes next for them. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Toronto.
Sophia Kambalia joins us now with a first look at the forecast. Sophia, what surprised me about that storm yesterday, it seemed really short, but it was powerful.
Yeah, it really speaks to the potency of the heat and humidity that has been ripe in the atmosphere as of late. Heat warning still in place, but heat is just one ingredient, right? You need a lifting mechanism as well. Tonight, as we speak, right now, potent line of storms going through much of southern Ontario, being barreled along southern Ontario by a really, really fast-moving cold front. Now, yesterday, it was a horse of a different color. There was a light lake breeze that acted as the lifting mechanism. It didn't have the strength to really push those storms away. There wasn't that steering in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which meant those storms, when they came down and were created, were slow-moving, training storms that dropped a ton of rainfall, as you know, in some of those localities, and created that extreme flooding and extreme wind damage. Now, this same cold front that is barreling through the province as we speak, with the frequent lightning and hail and extreme downpours, will eventually clear out that heat and humidity, as you heard in that earlier report, to a more refreshing long-range forecast. I'll have that for you in a few minutes.
Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
Today, the province is reporting 740 new cases of COVID-19 and 2 additional deaths. More than 500 of those cases are in people who are not fully vaccinated or whose vaccination status is unknown. At this point, nearly 83% of Ontario adults have now had at least 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. And with the start of school just around the corner, more kids turning 12 this year are getting their vaccines.
I feel like a massive privilege and relief that my kid just turned 12 and can get the vaccine. I feel for any parent right now that has to put their kids in schools with the rising numbers and their ineligibility to get the vaccine. I think that would be terrifying.
This family was at the Thorncliffe Park Vaccine Clinic. The Go Vax bus, a mobile vaccination clinic, was also out and about this weekend. Meanwhile, the province is expected to announce a vaccine passport early this week. We got reaction to that from some people getting their shots today.
If it helps getting anything back to normal, I mean, go for it, you know?
But I think it depends what the vaccine passports are being used for. Like, I don't think it's going to be possible to have it implemented in every single restaurant.
Yeah, I think it's good that, because, then the community is safe. We're all safe.
I feel like if you're going to be traveling, I think that's like one of the main mandatory standards to have the vaccine passport to show that you're fully vaccinated.
To the federal campaign trail now, where Justin Trudeau made a policy announcement on fighting climate change in Ontario. But once again, his campaign message had to compete with hostile opponents in the crowd. The CBC's Travis Danraj reports.
Arrest Trudeau! Arrest Trudeau!
The anger palpable.
He belongs in China!
Misogynistic insults, death threats, and this. A black officer called the N-word. As an angry crowd of protesters surrounded a campaign venue in Cambridge, Ontario, the press conference was delayed for over an hour as the RCMP conducted a risk assessment. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau was defiant when he emerged.
Do we fall into division and hatred and racism and violence? Or do we say, no, you know what? That doesn't work to get us to back down. That won't scare Canadians from standing up for what's right.
While the crowd blared car alarms and shouted profanities, the Liberal leader pressed on with a message about climate change.
The sirens in the background may remind us that this is a climate emergency. That's why we will move faster and be bolder.
Promising to cut oil and gas emissions to make sure half of all cars sold by 2030 will be zero emission. The crowds have dogged Trudeau on the campaign trail, escalating on Friday with the cancellation of an event. Other party leaders have been swift to denounce the incidents.
I strongly condemn any form of harassment and protest, the like we've seen.
Mr. Trudeau and his team were worried about their safety. That should never have happened, and that's wrong.
Hey, Michelle, there's pictures.
And it's not just the Liberal leader. Calgary Conservative candidate Michelle Rempel-Garner released a statement about this incident, a man videotaping her while she was out for dinner. She says in these moments, quote, "I don't feel like they see me as a human." Anger toward politicians is not new, but this feels different according to this expert who has watched Canadian politics for years.
I think what's distressing about this is the degree to which it's really just parroting what's going on in the United States.
The Liberal leader is now here in Montreal, and while his team does not discuss security specifics, there does seem to be an increased presence of officers, including some that we saw in full tactical gear, possibly the new normal as the campaign nears the midway point. Travis Stanrash, CBC News, Montreal.
Conservative leader Erin O'Toole made his own policy announcement today, promising a new tax credit for investment in Canadian small businesses. The CBC's Evan Dyer reports.
Erin O'Toole almost certainly needs to expand his Quebec caucus to win this election. He spent the day in a region of unpredictable 3- and 4-way races where the Bloc Québécois led the pack in 2019. And he laid out a package of tax credits and loans he says will encourage investment in small businesses.
This new incentive will provide a 25% tax credit on amounts of up to $100,000 that Canadians personally invest in a small business over the next 2 years. Our plan will also help those local businesses that have survived but still need some help getting back on their feet.
The Conservatives say the plan will lead to more hiring, and public servants will work out the details if the party's elected.
Jagmeet Singh took his campaign to Quebec today, where he joined up with one of the candidates who was part of the NDP's 2011 success in that province. The CBC's Nick Poivert reports.
I'm Nick Poivert here with the NDP campaign in Yamachiche, Quebec. Jagmeet Singh is here today hoping to find a little momentum in a province where they lost every seat but one in 2019. Today they're trying to recapture some of that magic from the Orange Wave. In 2011, reintroducing Ruth Ellen Brosseau here in Berthier-Masquinongé. Her election in 2011 made her one of Parliament's most unlikely MPs. She says herself she never thought she would win, but she did, and repeated in 2015 before losing last time to the Bloc.
I know there's going to be momentum. I'm really hoping that people are open and are going to be supporting us. I have an amazing feeling that this is going to be different this time around. So I'm looking forward to working with these candidates on the ground and all across Quebec.
CBC's poll tracker has the NDP at 13% support in Quebec right now, just 2 points up from the vote in 2019.
Police have now identified the victim in a triple shooting early Saturday morning in Toronto's entertainment district. Sahal Sahal is a Toronto man. He was shot and killed near Duncan and King Streets. 2 women were also taken to hospital. Police are asking any witnesses to come forward. The U.S. says it has thwarted an attempted attack on Kabul airport in Afghanistan by drone strike. That's after more than 180 people were killed at the airport in a suicide bombing on Thursday. With the August 31st U.S. withdrawal deadline looming, many Afghans are looking to escape by land. The CBC's senior correspondent Susan Ormiston is in Pakistan's capital and has this report.
There are definitely still many Afghans still trying to get out, and even if the agreement with the Taliban to let them out, foreign nationals and those with special visas, the airport is still closed in Kabul to commercial traffic. So the only way out is overland, by land, and we're seeing Afghan refugees group up at Pakistan's borders. It's about a 9-hour drive from Kabul to Islamabad, and down south in Shaman, Pakistan, a reported 10,000 Afghan refugees have crossed into there. The UN is predicting this is the next big refugee influx in the world, and Pakistan, Turkey, Iran, those neighboring countries are bracing for an influx. And with already 1.4 million Afghan refugees here in Pakistan, this government is not too interested in accepting thousands more. We're really entering a new phase here. I mean, this week, that airport, there are multinational negotiations going on with the Taliban right now to get it open and operating, critical for stability, for international aid organizations, for those still stranded in Afghanistan. But really, the focus now turns to the millions of Afghans who are staying in their country. The Taliban hasn't formed a government. Sources tonight say they are close to doing that, close to announcing a cabinet. But real fear and anxiety, worry about what that government is going to look like and what's going to happen to the freedoms of Afghans living in that country today.
Canada's evacuation flights ended last week, but CBC News has learned more people heading here have since fled. The Canadian government's efforts have faced harsh criticism. The CBC's Hannah Thibodeau now with the government's response to that criticism.
Save Afghanistan! Save Afghanistan!
Across the country this weekend, cries for Canada to do more.
No more Taliban! No more Taliban!
And to act faster to help people still stuck in Afghanistan.
Yes, we accept criticism that we should have been able to start this earlier.
The Foreign Affairs Minister on Rosemary Barton Live admitted the Canadian evacuation operation was slow to start. Officials surprised by the Taliban takeover.
Of course, none of those 13 countries, including Canada, were able to anticipate the speed with which the Taliban, even the Taliban, I think, were surprised at how quickly they took over the country and how quickly the Afghan army essentially folded.
Canada got 3,700 people out, including 2,000 Afghans, before its flights ended on Thursday. But thousands have been left behind, some fearing Taliban reprisals for their work with the Canadian military. This former interpreter worries about her colleagues left behind.
My heart aches for those interpreters and those families, because if they are caught, they will be killed, and they will be killed really brutally, and they will be executed.
This Afghan war veteran believes Canada lacked a plan.
It seems like now we're grasping at straws and trying to come up with new plans when in fact we don't have a strategy, and that's the troubling part.
Canada no longer has a presence on the ground, but it's hoping its recent pledge of $50 million in aid for Afghans will act as leverage to help ensure the Taliban gives safe passage to more Afghans and their families. The Foreign Affairs Minister says he'll talk with the other G7 leaders tomorrow to discuss how the evacuation efforts can continue to happen. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
Hurricane Ida is barreling through Louisiana and the U.S. Gulf Coast after making landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. Power has been knocked out to hundreds of thousands of homes, making things even more challenging for those who've been hunkering down. The CBC's Carolyn Dunn has this report.
A life-threatening storm, one for the record books.
This is one of the strongest storms to make landfall here in modern times.
Oh my God. Ida is tearing a path of destruction through Louisiana tonight. Storm surges and dumping rain bring dangerous flooding.
This is the time to stay inside. Do not venture out. No sightseeing. This is very serious.
We have massive winds.
Unable to evacuate, Canadian Tanya Gulliver is sheltering in place in New Orleans with her dog Bear, hoping the city's upgraded levee holds, planning if it doesn't.
If I see the water coming, there's a hospital about a mile away. Otherwise, wait until the water gets high enough and float onto my roof is the best I think I can do.
Still etched in the city's psyche, haunting memories of Hurricane Katrina that hit this day in 2005. Canadian nurse practitioner Summer Marshall is sheltering in place with her parents who lived through Katrina.
They're definitely struggling emotionally, hoping that the same thing doesn't happen again.
Louisiana's governor says this time the levee won't fail.
The Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction System will hold and perform as intended. Will it be tested? Yes. But it was built for this moment.
No one hopes that is true more than medical professionals. Hospitals are brimming with COVID patients as the state experiences a pandemic surge.
What we don't have is space, and what we don't have are healthcare workers because of COVID.
Ida, seen here from a plane flying through its eye, has shown it has a mind of its own. As it churns inland, the concern now that the storm will slow down, giving it more time to do more damage and dump more rain. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Washington.
Let's go back to Sophia Kambalia with a look at your forecast. Sophia, it looks like Ida was recently downgraded to a Category 2 storm, but it's still battering Louisiana.
Yeah, a wide part of the Gulf Coast still getting those outer rain bands. 165 kilometers an hour. It is beginning to slow down, could pack more punch as it does so. As you just heard there, it's still a really organized system, Farah, and for a little while, after it made its 2 landfalls along the Gulf Coast earlier today, it actually looked to be re-intensifying inland, picking up a warm surge from those warmer and low friction inland swamp waters in Louisiana. Is still very organized. It is weakening though, luckily, as it moves into more solid ground. What about our systems here at home? Losing a little bit of organization as well. Still some severe thunderstorm warnings in place for those of you in the Niagara region and up in Cottage Country. It's that cold front that's moving things through. It will also continue to sweep out that heat and humidity. It has been a dog's age since we've been able to say we've been at a week of seasonal temperatures, with the feels like that will also be feeling quite seasonal. It will be a breath of fresh air. You heard it a little earlier in the show. This cold front will take its sweet time to sweep that heat and humidity away. It won't be until Tuesday that you breathe that more refreshing air. Until then, you have one more day at Monday with forecast in the high 20s and it feels like in the mid 30s. And then look at the rest of the week. We should be 24 this time of year. We are bang on seasonal for the rest of the work week. For tonight, eyes to the sky, still a chance of some of those severe storms to roll through.
Have to say I'm looking forward to that cool down, Sophia. Thanks very much.
Yeah, it'll be nice. No problem.
Now that is our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Farah Morali. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website at cbcnews.ca. Have a great night.